Batman, on a level, you could be the greatest individual in football history.
We are back with another video, and today I am joined by a very special guest, Jason from Rams Review Podcast. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right, mate. How are you?
Listen, as I said before, hay fever's killing me, but listen, the content still has to come. And this is a very exciting video because I'm a massive viewer of United's youth team, and I think this player here that we're going to talk about, Malcolm Ebiowei,
Ebiowei, yeah.
Ebiowei. Listen, I'm just going to call it Malcolm because that second name, I have to get used to it, is potentially signing for Manchester United, according to people like Fabrizio Romano and Jonathan Schrager. And we're just going to talk about how he's been for Derby, whether and how high his ceiling is really. But let's get started. And before we get started, make sure you guys like the video, comment, subscribe, and follow Rams Review Podcast. The link is going to be in the description below. But anyway, how has Malcolm been for Derby this season?
Yeah, he was a strange one, really. He came in the summer, signed a 12-month deal from. He got released by Rangers, so we brought him in, and he went straight into our under-18s team. As I'm sure a lot of United fans may well have been keeping track on Derby's fortunes due to the manager this year, and with lots of player losses and things like that, Malcolm got his chance, and we call him Malcolm because we can't pronounce his surname either. I mean, he came into the first team in around probably about December, January time. The fans have already created a song for him. Goes to show you, what our second half of the season he had. He's quite typical of a lot of 18-year-olds. He's absolutely rapid. He's very skillful. For an 18-year-old, he's very skillful. And his quality of first touch, controlling the ball, being able to dribble, run with the ball, his close ball control is actually really, really solid. He's an exciting player. He's quite direct. He likes to get down the bar line. He likes to get the crosses in. His end product's not fantastic at the minute, but he is we use that term raw, and he is a raw talent. When obviously his name started coming in, I think on his debut, he came on second half substitute, about 20 minutes to go in a game earlier on. I'm sure it was January time. I can't remember who it was against though. His first period of the ball, he took on 3 defenders and killed one from about 30 yards that hit the bar. So we were all like, all right, okay. And then game after game after game. I mean, I think he's made something like 18 or 19 appearances for Derby the back end of the season. I can think of one where I would say he had a bit of an off game. So, 18 championship games for an 18-year-old when, I say, before that, he was only playing youth football. He's quite impressive, really. And one thing that, obviously, Derby, because of the situation this year, has been any of the youngsters who they've had the chances, they've been given opportunities, and if they've taken them, then they've tended to have stayed around the first team, and that's exactly what Malcolm did. He took his chances. In his first 4 or 5 games, set up a couple of goals, should have scored as well, didn't. He's only scored 1 goal for Derby, and that actually came, I think, in the second to last game of the season. And it was only a 2-yard tap in, but some of the strikes
that count.
Yeah, well, they do. I mean, some of the strikes that he's had that have hit the woodwork, pulled off fantastic saves by the keeper or just missed. Some of them would have been a absolute fantastic highlight reel if you were looking at them, if they'd have found the back of the net for a 6-month period in the Championship. But yeah, I mean, he only signed a 12-month deal at Derby. He came from Arsenal originally. He came through Arsenal's academy, went up to Rangers. I think he had 2 years at Rangers, and then obviously came to Derby. So I suppose, it was a bit of a gamble. If he was that good, why didn't Arsenal keep him? Why didn't Rangers want to keep him? It's one of them. But he would now. I mean, as you say, it does sound like that Derby aren't going to be able to keep hold of him, which would be a massive shame because it would have been obviously Derby not being in the Championship. Would he want to play in League One? You know, that's understandable. And obviously, when teams like Man United come calling, I know there's other big Premier League sides up there that have been linked with him. You know, obviously he's going to be interested in going. I mean, I don't think he's good enough to grace the United's first team at this moment in time. Like you say, he probably would go into the youth setup there. Is that something that he's interested in? Would he go straight back out on loan? Quite possibly. Hopefully Derby and Mr. ROONEY, if he's still here, is at the front of the queue to get him back on loan if that's the case. Because I'd be gobsmacked if he did come back and play in League One. Then he'd absolutely tear that division up because he really was doing a pretty solid job in the Championship. He was a fan's favourite. He was a player that we were hoping we'd be able to keep hold of him, and he's obviously must have done something right because it's not every day that Man United come sniffing around 18-year-olds unless they've done a pretty decent job. So if wherever he goes, if it is United, I mean, you're getting a prospect. There's no doubt about that. There's, as with every 18-year-old, he's got things to work on. He's not very bulky. He's quite slender. He's quite, he probably needs that couple of years of development as he's getting older. But one thing about him is his flair and his nimbleness around in and around some of the dribbles. If any fans have seen some of the highlight packages that I'm sure there are on YouTube, obviously I've seen the majority of them in live games. Just some of his close control, as I said earlier, his close control and his ability to take players on is incredible. Really, it's something that I've certainly not seen at Derby from somebody of that age for quite some time.
Interesting. I've seen a lot of like journalists say he's a striker, but when I've seen like the highlights on YouTube and stuff, it seems like he's more of a right-hand sided player.
Yeah, we've only ever played him on the right wing. I mean, he may well have been a striker before in youth teams, but ever since he's come in for Derby, he's played on the right wing. He has been utilised on the left a couple of times. Don't tend to get the same out of him on the left, but Derby do swap wingers around, and sometimes because of how many players Derby have got this season, he's had to play because he's been he's been the only one who's fit who can play on a wing. But no, definitely right wing, definitely right footed. Yeah, I've seen him. I think three times. I think on the left he's swatched over there and doesn't have the same impact.
What sort of winger would you say he is? Like, obviously we have like people that can take a player down the outside, or there's those wingers that just come inside, drift inside, and more of those like creative sort of wingers. How would you describe him?
You see, this is the good thing, and I have a feeling this is probably why Premier League clubs are sniffing around him. From what we've seen in that 20-game spell, he's got it all in his locker. He can do it all, dependent on what defender he comes up against. He's not just a one-trick pony. He has got different ways of beating players. Some of the highlights, I say, in some of the games this year, I'm trying to think of one of the. I think it was when we played. It was one of the top sides at home. I want to say Fulham. I think it's Brian, their left back. Obviously, Fulham, top of the league, flying. He absolutely had him on toast all game. He's one of the best left backs in the Championship, and he didn't know how to cope with him. Obviously, you kind of get that with some players, and obviously then your fullbacks tend to go in on them hard and bring them down and draw a lot of fouls. He doesn't really do that. He doesn't tend to draw a lot of fouls. He has got the trickery to get himself out of that situation. He reads the game really well. I think he knows when obviously a challenge is coming in, and more often than not, he can get out of the way of it. And some of his, as I say, it's certainly, if the highlights from what I've seen of him, is close control, his ball skills, his ball control is fantastic. He can get to the right. He's very direct. He can get straight down the bar line. He can dribble in. One thing that he does do is he tends to get into the penalty area, and then, as I say, his end product's not the best, or he tends to dive quite a lot, and he's looking for penalties quite a lot. He that burst, it's weird when you watch him. He can run one-on-one because he has got the pace, but he can also hold fullbacks up and let them come to him, and before you know it, he's round them, and he's got a real bag of tricks in him. I mean, we're not talking step overs and stuff like that. You know, he's not that type of player. But just you can just tell he's got a real good footballing brain. He knows how to beat a man, and yeah, he'll get himself into the box. And then I've seen on 3 or 4 occasions at Derby where he's gone down a little too easy, shall we say, throws himself to the floor a little bit, looking for that penalty, which all good
I
wingers
think
and
most
forward
wingers
players do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
you know how they are. And maybe you never know in it. Like I always say this: when wingers are running fast, like any little contact, sometimes will just take them down. And
Yeah.
you know, wingers like, listen, we know how referees are. Unless you go down, they don't normally give a penalty.
No.
So that's why I'm like with wingers. As much as I hate people diving, I always say I can kind of understand it. As bad as that might sound. What would you say are his like biggest weaknesses? Like you said, he needs to improve his end product, which I think, as a young player, you obviously can improve. What else would you say?
I mean, I think I don't even know if you can call them weaknesses, like you said there. I think it's just it's an age thing. He's going through experience because obviously these are his first competitive games in of his career. For all what I said about he has got a footballing brain. You can see he's got a talent. He's got to learn the dark arts of the game, if you will. He's got to know when he can ride a foul. He's got to know when he can go down, when he can't go down. But again, they're things that you pick up from experience. His end product definitely it does have to improve. Now, I'm not saying that necessarily his end product's that bad, but there are times you see him, he'll get the ball on the halfway line or wherever, and he's going to end up on the edge of the 18-yard box 9 times out of 10. He's going to do it. He's got that ability to get there. And then it is a bit of a toss of a coin as to what kind of a ball he puts in. So yeah, that's that kind of thing. He's got to obviously work with that to become obviously one of the better top players who can make it week in week out in the Premier League. Obviously that needs to be added. Not really seeing him because he is 18. He's not huge. He's not massively built or anything like that. But I've not seen that be necessarily a problem in the Championship. Obviously, looking down the line for him in a couple of years, where obviously the quality of fullbacks and things like that are going to be better than what he's come up against. He might need to adapt a couple of things that he does. But I mean, obviously, you could probably say that about most Championship players. They're in the Championship because they're not of the quality of the Premier League week in, week out. So, but other than that, everything kind of what I've seen from him has been pretty impressive. And I think most Derby fans would say the same thing. Say the only thing that I'm a little not afraid of, but skeptical was, like I say, he came through the Arsenal academy, and obviously Arsenal, well-known club for giving their youngsters a chance. He hadn't been out on loan anywhere. He obviously left straight there, went to Rangers. Only spent, 18 months, I think it was, at Rangers then in their youth academy. He was playing in their youth academy. Then came down to Derby to play in the youth academy. As I say, circumstances has meant that he's been given his opportunity, and obviously sometimes that's what you need. So it'd be interesting. I think because he is a free transfer, I think he is worth a gamble, to be honest. As I say, I'd love him to stay around at Derby, but I honestly can't see that happening. I think if he was under contract, and obviously we were talking money, and there was more of a fee around him, I don't know if necessarily some of the big boys would take a chance on him. I think they don't tend to make decisions based on 18 Championship appearances. He'd probably have to have another season behind his belt first before they start looking at picking them off like that. But on a free transfer, which is what it would be, I don't think whoever purchases him would owe Derby anything. Then it is a gamble, probably a gamble worth taking. I suppose it all depends on what the player wants to do. If obviously, I would presume going to somebody like United, or I know Tottenham's been linked and other teams like that. If he's willing to go and sit in their academy setup, because he isn't Premier League first team ready, I wouldn't say. If he's happy to go and do that and apply his trade for a couple of years, then fine. If that means he does get out on loan certainly championship level. We've seen that he can equip himself at that level quite comfortably. Be interested to see how he could do it over a full season, because obviously, as I say, he only come in January, and he did miss a couple of games through injury. But other than that, I mean, I can't really pull out many negatives about him. There's not really anything negative to say about him, other than, let's say, just that there'll be a couple of things that he'd obviously want to tweak. But as an 18-year-old, there's going to be plenty really that he can build on, and if he adapts himself and puts the effort in, then I think he can become a Premier League player.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear. And just quickly before we wrap things up, we have to touch on it. Wayne Rooney. Obviously, from a United point of view, I'm obviously going to have my bias in terms of I think he's done a decent job considering the circumstances. I've obviously seen like small clips and stuff of Wayne Rooney maybe talking to the fans and stuff outside the ground. How do you think Wayne Rooney's done?
Oh, he's been amazing. It's probably only now, and I mean anybody who's not kind of on the news of what's going off at Derby County, we don't even know if we've got a club at the minute. So it's a little bit crazy. It's taken kind of like till now to not realise he was doing a good job. We knew he was doing a good job, but when you're not fully emotionally invested in the heat of a season, obviously we were 21 points deducted. We were fighting against relegation. Obviously, ultimately didn't do it in the end. And it was quite difficult. But now you sit back and you look at it. Obviously, season finished a few weeks ago now. You look at it and you look what he managed to achieve with what he got in terms of a squad, what was going off behind the scenes above him. I don't know many other managers who were experienced that would have done what Wayne's done. And this was obviously his first real crack at management. It's an odd one. It's not very often. We've obviously on our podcast talking to other Derby fans and obviously other media outlets. They're all, because of the name Wayne Rooney, they're all invested, and we've all kind of said the same thing. It's bizarre to have such a club being obviously not by him, but run in a particular, not in a very good way at the moment, been relegated, all the other stuff that's going on with Derby County, but then the players certainly and the manager are the ones that are coming out with it with the most praise and gratitude. And I mean, if Wayne Rooney was to walk away tomorrow, I don't know. I honestly don't know if he will or not. I hope he doesn't, but I don't know. I don't know why there aren't other clubs who are looking for managers would not be in conversation with Wayne with what he's done at Derby. We've all said the same. It's very difficult to judge him. The first time, obviously, when he came in as a player, he wasn't the player of a couple of years ago. He really wasn't. We got a handful of decent performances out of him. You could tell he was struggling with with a back injury. Obviously, got the job then, and in that first 6 months of the job, it was halfway through a season after a manager sacking. He'd got the players that he'd got. Derby were under a transfer embargo, couldn't bring anybody in, couldn't do anything. And there were questions asked. There was questions asked of him. We didn't think he was getting the best out of the squad that they'd got. And obviously, ultimately, last season the season before, stayed up on the last day of the season. And then we were all kind of like, right, well, obviously, new season, give him a fair crack of the whip. Derby was still under a transfer embargo. But, that surely he must have a black book of contacts, find out who we can get hold of, get some players through the door. And then everything kicked off the field even worse. And so we couldn't really bring too many players in. But the players that he did bring in, yeah, they were has-beens and misfits and things like that. But what he's managed to achieve this season has been nothing short really of a miracle. And I'm not just saying that just because obviously he's the manager of my club, but I don't know of any other managers who would do it. We've got, I think out of the squad of 18, 9 of them are under 21. I mean, you don't win, famously the saying, you don't win much with kids, and you don't. But we were relying on a 37-year-old up front to score goals to keep us in the championship. I centre-back pairing of Jagielka and Curtis Davis had got a combined age of nearly 80. It was and Derby defied the odds. If you were to look at it, I mean, the teams that went up, we took 4 points off Fulham, we took 4 points off Bournemouth. We unfortunately didn't beat Forest, which is obviously a bit of a disappointment from us. But all them other teams up and around the top six, I think we lost 3. I think it was 3 or 4 home games all season. That's all we lost. It was ultimately the away form that was terrible, and Derby. That was the reason that Derby got relegated. If they'd have picked up a couple more points away from home, Derby would have survived, and then we'd have been talking about something even bigger. You know, Wayne Rooney kept Derby up with a 21-point deduction. I mean, he's up here already in Derby folklore for what he's managed. If he'd have managed to keep Derby up, that would have just pushed him onto a complete another level. And there is a part of me that thinks that he wants to stay to rebuild something. Obviously, it was reported he turned the Everton job. He turned down an interview for the Everton job not too long ago, saying that obviously he was trying to be loyal. He'd got a job to do at Derby. He's still contracted, I believe, until next year. So it'd be interesting. It'd be interesting to see if he wants to stay. Not necessarily on Wayne from this. And this is not really about Wayne Rooney, but I know that our assistant manager, Liam Rossini, was heavily linked with the Blackpool job. We believed that he'd been offered it and he'd accepted it. And it came out yesterday that he's turned it down, which for somebody who has been an assistant at Derby for about 3 or 4 years, wants to get into management, why has he turned an opportunity down of a championship club who did pretty well in the last season? I can only think that that's probably because he's spoken with Wayne, spoken with the club, and said, "What reassurances can you offer me? Any reassurances about the project that we're going to try and build at Derby in League One? And if you can not convince me, but if there's something worth staying for and worth fighting for, then obviously I'll stay. But if obviously the cards were on the wall, writing was on the wall that Wayne was going to leave, Rossini would have probably got the Derby job if he'd have stayed around, to be honest, if Wayne walked. So in wanting to stay, fills me full of a bit of confidence. I know it's filled the fan base with a little bit of confidence. They think that's a good thing. Not a lot of noise coming out of the club at the moment with what's going on takeover-wise, but that seems a good thing. The fans have taken that as a positive thing. And at the moment, while the days keep ticking on and Wayne, as far as we know, is still manager of Derby County, then we have to see that as a positive. And again, given the opportunity and given the tools to, I think he could build something really special at Derby. And whilst I can't sit here and say I expect Derby to go up next season from League One, obviously they'll be one of the favourites. But I think Wayne can build something, and I think he can take it into the Championship and do a pretty decent job there as well. And I think obviously, if he'd have been relegated with Derby and there'd have been no points deductions and things like that, I don't think we'd be talking about him on the same level. Technically, his management did not get Derby County relegated. It was factors, outside, off of the pitch, basically, that ultimately sent them down. I mean, don't get me wrong, we weren't challenging for the top 6 or anything like that, given the points back, but we were where we were. It was even before the points deduction, it was very much of everything off the pitch was causing too much controversy and too much trouble. That needed to be done. Everything on the pitch, it was about survival, staying up comfortably, not right in that relegation battle, just kind of mid to low table. Derby fans would have been happy with that. A year of transition, Derby wouldn't have had an issue with that at all. Obviously, unfortunately, the EFL had other ideas and decided to give us 21 points deduction. So I hope he stays. I really do. He's been one of them that obviously he's not really any different from what I can. Obviously, you would have watched him as United. I can remember watching him obviously and then playing for England and stuff like that. He doesn't come across as any different to what he was if you ever saw him do interviews as a player. He's obviously got a footballing brain. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Somebody of that talent must have ideas on the training ground and things like that. Obviously, with the managers that he's worked with, he must have picked up some things along the way. And if he can rub those off onto some of our younger lads and lads that he brings in or could bring in, I mean, that can surely learn a striker learning his trade from your manager who's Wayne Rooney can only be a good thing. So it's one of them. I mean, I hope he stays. I hope he stays for a long time. I don't think he will. I think he might well see his contract out because he seems that loyal type of person, which he's always, he's always kind of been throughout his playing career. He's always been loyal. So I would expect to see him unless something really takes a turn for the worst at Derby over the next couple of weeks. But yeah, it keeps people interested in Derby, doesn't it? Why Wayne Rooney's there.
Yeah, because I'll be honest, as a United fan, I did watch a couple of Derby games just because of Wayne Rooney's the manager, and I think I probably speak for a lot of the fan base. I think a lot of United fans probably did. So I think everyone just wants Derby to come back up. I think everyone loves the story with Wayne Rooney, and I think only time will tell, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, big up everyone for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the talk of Malcolm and Wayne Rooney, because listen, I love this talk. Hope you enjoyed it as well, Jason.
I did, mate. It was excellent. Anytime talking about football, Derby County especially, I'm all for it.
Make sure you guys like the video, comment your thoughts on Malcolm and obviously how Wayne Rooney's done at Derby. Subscribe to the channel. Make sure you guys follow Jason's podcast. The link is going to be in the description below. The Twitter is going to be there. So make sure you guys follow that, and we will be back soon.